Call to order officially going into the Apex Parks and Recreation Cultural Resources Advisory Commission meeting for April 26th. I will start with a moment of silence for the invocation, please. Right on cue. That's we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. That was great. That was great. All right. The next item is approval of the March 29th meeting minutes. Do we have any discussion or comments or motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed, nay? All right, so meeting's passed. And I am going to formally now step out. I've got a prior engagement I've got to get to, but we have a,
No, not yet.
no,
Not yet.
sorry. My bad.
Oh, for the first item.
We're gonna, okay, my bad. I had it written down wrong. Yes, so Jeff, you need to,
You need to make a motion to change the order of the agenda first. I would like to make a
Jeff.
motion to move new business to the beginning of the agenda.
perfect.
Second.
In favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so we will then do the director's report at the end and start with new business. Is that correct? Perfect, okay.
And I would also like to make a motion to recuse myself from the first new business item.
Perfect. All right. Do we hear a motion? You made the motion?
He made the motion.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Perfect. All right. So you can return after
Mike made the motion.
Mike made the motion. Okay. So
Yeah,
we
I
gotta,
did, yeah.
okay.
Just sounded like Jeff.
So Jeff can officially come back after the items of new business. Okay. So now I can turn it over to Daryl, right? Or do
You
we
have to
do the?
vote. We have to
You gotta
vote.
listen to the new business item.
Got you. I'm listening. I promise.
All right. We're ready for new business. Okay.
Yes.
The first
business
item
number one.
on your agenda this evening is the Castleberry Assemblage PUD. It's a rezoning request for 89.9 acres located south of Castleberry Road and west of Wimberley Road. It is north of Army Corps land for Jordan Lake. The project is proposing a maximum of 179 single-family detached residential units. There's no greenway shown on the master plan map in this location, but the technical review committee did request that a pedestrian connection be provided from the project to the American Tobacco Trail, which is just east of the property. And the property is located within a land dedication boundary, but is in near proximity to the future Wimberley Road parkland, so a land dedication was not proposed. And staff recommends a fee in lieu of dedication for 179 single-family detached residential units.
Questions? No? All right. Do we need to do them separate?
This one we just need a motion on.
Okay, do I hear a motion for new business item number one?
Motion to approve.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, number one passes.
Now you make a motion
Now
to,
he needs a motion to come back.
Now we need to make a motion
Right.
for Jeff to
I'll make a
come
motion
officially-
to bring Jeff Roach back into.
Perfect. Do I hear a second? In favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, welcome back, Jeff.
Guys, for having me
it would have
back.
been great when you
Now,
opposed.
okay,
Yes, exactly.
perfect. All right, now I will officially turn this over to Daryl Lanier,
need
our
to
vice chair. Wait, do we?
Release you in some other official way?
No.
You can wave
Okay.
as I walk out, but yes, so yeah, I'm officially turning it over to Daryl Lanier, our vice chair. He's in very capable hands. And do I need to make a motion or I'm good? I am gonna take this so I can,
Important part is he gets the gavel.
yes,
The gavel.
literally in the gavel.
All right, take it easy, man.
Have a very good evening. I will follow back up.
All right, man. Good evening, everyone. All right, so are we jumping to new business item number 2?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. All right.
All right, new business item number 2. Staff is requesting consideration and a recommendation to amend the Parks, Recreation, Greenways, and Open Space Master Plan and associated subsequent amendments to the Bicycle, Pedestrian, and Equestrian Transportation Plan as a result of the public engagement and input that has been identified in the recommendations and implementation and action plan, which are proposed in the Master Plan for Parks, Recreation, Cultural Resources, Greenways, and Open Space, which is anticipated to be adopted by Town Council on May 9th. This is an overview map that you can see of all of the recommended changes just sort of in location. We're going to go through these items one at a time, but I just wanted you to have a reference here before we got started of the general location of all of the amendments that are being proposed to the Greenway Systems map as a part of the master plan update.
Angela, if we have questions about individual, do you want us to kind of stop you at each one or kind of wait till the end?
That's a good question. One of the things that I was going to suggest is that if you want, I'll do each one individually in the detailed sheet that you have, and then at that time, if you have questions specific to that one, we can answer those. And then at the end, we can either go back and you can do motions individually, or make a motion to recommend all as approved or all as noted. But at least we can discuss them as we go through them and then make motions at the end, if that works. Okay. So general note, staff completed 3 feasibility studies with our consultant based on the recommendations from the proposed implementation and action plan for 3 items, number 6, Reedy Branch, number 7, Beaver Creek, and number 14, Big Branch, as these were the highest priority corridors from the new matrix that was developed as a part of the master plan process. I'm just kind of giving you that as a category so that you understand that you'll see some amendments that are have many in one corridor, and that is because of the feasibility study where we actually went out and did on-site evaluation of those corridors. Those adjacent residents were sent notifications prior to the field studies, and we did receive input from residents and HO representatives in those corridors. That's in addition to the public engagement where people might have come to any of the events and marked or requested or identified a concern they had about a proposed corridor on our map. The public in general was also engaged through maps and surveys that were provided during our public engagement and input opportunities for the master plan update. Staff also started the cycle for greenways where each year funds will be allocated with the budget to complete feasibility studies to further assess proposed alignments prior to development driving the process and engaging residents sooner in the planning process than we've ever done before. Staff has grouped these recommendations for amendments into 3 categories. One is added for connectivity to the existing system, and I'll identify these as we get to each one, but just so you know the range of the scopes we've kind of grouped them into. Based on existing or planned development in the process, and added amendments based on the feasibility studies, or they might be amendments based on the feasibility studies as well. And then, as I said, unless you prefer otherwise, we'll go through each one. You can ask me questions when we're there, and then we'll get to the end of all 14 sets of amendments, and then you guys can decide whether or not you're comfortable making a motion for all of them as a whole or individually make recommended motions. With that said, we do have 2 sets of maps. You've got both of them. One of them is based on the combined Greenway map with the transportation plan maps, and then you have the one that's just related to our Parks and Rec Greenway open space. Because of the way that the mapping is done from our master plan to the transportation plan, I'm going to be using the transportation plan maps only because they also show open space in some of the development areas. So if you've got them in front of you, the one that has a lot more green on it has some other information that isn't always shown on our master plan map. And in the future, we're probably going to remove having these 2 different sets of maps, but that will be a product of the master plan adoption and moving forward with our mapping. So that said, I know it's a lot of information. Amendment number 1 adds proposed greenway sections that connect Wimberley Road to the American Tobacco Trail north of 815 Wimberley Road, and a section that connects north to existing greenway in Castleberry Trails and the point at Lake Castleberry. This connection does not align directly to the current White Oak Creek connection at Weddington, which is further south. Because the NCDOT Rail Division has indicated that they prefer offset crossings of the ATT, and that the proposed alignment from the west to the ATT is on an existing access easement for existing homes that would likely be converted as redevelopment occurred. Connections to the ATT are limited by NCDOT, and the two Castleberry subdivisions that have current greenway that runs north and south would provide a paralleling connection through new development as it would occur in that segment that you see. Staff recommends the addition of this proposed greenway section that connects Wimberley Road to the American Tobacco Trail, as it will provide needed bike ped connectivity to residential uses in the area and the ATT as this area would redevelop. This would allow subdivisions on the opposite west side of Wimberley Road to connect at several key points, such as you see up at Burlap Drive, where existing sidewalk has a crossing of Wimberley Road, and then the residents on the west side of Wimberley can access the trail on the east side. So that is Amendment 1. Any questions?
Quick question I just
Yes.
noticed. This doesn't follow any creeks or streams. And Angela, I sent you that big long email and pointed all these out. The north-south one concerns me because that takes a greenway through a possible subdivision layout, which is likely to be residential. Does it make sense to make that a proposed greenway or side path or street side sidewalk or something other than just a greenway?
As always, we have the opportunity when development comes in to amend that.
Okay.
And again, this is a proposal based on the fact that the projects above both did greenway and made them work in their projects. They're a little bit wider.
I just want to make sure they have the flexibility to change it from a greenway, which is typically through the woods, where this is going perpendicular to any streams or creeks or stuff like that. So,
Right.
Okay.
We always have the chance to amend that, especially as we would imagine that you'd have to have a lot of these properties developed together to make it worth redevelopment. And we don't know that that is going to be a plan, but we also want to make sure we identify those opportunities.
Perfect. Thank you, Angela.
Any other questions?
No.
So I would need a, say we want to do this one at a time. You guys want to go through all of them and try to recommend all of them at once, or do we want to vote on?
I think we just wait. I think we wait.
I'm okay
Just waiting to.
reviewing all of them and then just do a wholesale.
Yep.
Okay.
Right, unless, that's why I like.
Unless there's one that we
You
need to
might
pull
need
out.
something might
There's
come
one
up.
we want to pull out,
Yes.
but everything else is probably gonna be easier just to.
Okay.
So amendment number 2, as a proposed greenway segment just south of the intersection of the American Tobacco Trail and Wimberley Road. At that intersection, there is a current Wake County trailhead. This section would run east into the former Williams Tract parcel, which is this parcel here, that we had recently purchased, which is part of the Wimberley Road future parkland. It is along an access easement through Army Corps land and crosses a Colonial Pipeline easement, but that easement was transferred with the title to the town, and so we do have that as a recorded access easement. And with that, there are 2 bridges that cross existing creeks, and our intent, based on the location and some of the environmental features, is that this would be an unpaved trail similar to the ATT, but would provide a pedestrian and bicycle access into the northern part of the park that will likely not have vehicular access due to environmental constraints.
What is the kind of the end of the new proposed leg? Kind of what does it end on? I mean, what is it?
In this
What is
area?
it reaching? Yeah, what is it?
So there's about 2.5 acres in the middle of that site that could be developed, and in the concept plans that the consultant prepared for the future park, that was passive recreation in that area.
just getting
so-
access to that area of the park.
Right, and what we intend is sort of that once that greenway access is made, that there would be an internal routing of trail through the park in some way. But because it's a 10-foot plus wide access road, designating it as a greenway sort of helps us maintain it as a easement that has access. Our concern was that if we didn't do something with it, that
Lose it.
somehow it would be considered vacated or abandoned. And so, and it's a nice transition for coming down Wimberley Road of how quickly you could get into a trail and be off of Wimberley Road if you wanted to ride in the park.
And so there are 2 existing bridges?
There are 2 existing bridges.
Thank you.
So staff recommends the addition of the proposed greenway segment that connects Wimberley Road to the future park at Wimberley Road, as it will provide key pedestrian bike connectivity into the future park. Any other questions? All right, amendment number 3 adds proposed side path along the east side of Holt Road between Old Jenks Road and Howell Road. From the west area, you'll see that we have the North Beaver Creek corridor that comes up and has side path up to Holt Road, and then greenway that comes through and over would cross to Howell Road. We've had a lot of requests for connectivity from the Middleton subdivision over to the Salem school site. We're not sure that we're going to be able to get some of that routing that we have on the school campus where we had hoped to get to the park. And this additional side path could potentially end up being a safe routes to school, whereas Greenway does not apply for that access. This route could potentially provide a no bus zone or a walk to school zone for residents in that area in the future. Let's see, there was some more notes with that. Planning staff, because this is side path and they would be the overseers of this, reviewed the proposed alignment and both sides of the street and determined that their preference was for the side path to be on the east side of Holt Road, as it would likely occur with the redevelopment of parcels on the east side, and that if it happened in the future, or then if not, then it would be a town project at the time they needed or saw that they needed to make that connection south. And while there are existing columns and fencing on several properties along that side of the road, they felt that the side path could be installed at a reduced width if needed at that time. So staff is recommending addition of proposed side path along Holt Road, as it will provide a safe bike pedestrian connectivity to residential uses in this area, and potentially be a safe routes to school for the Salem Middle School campus.
Is side path only in the current map located on the south side of Old Jenks Road, not the north side?
Yes.
Would we consider adding side path on the north side of Jenks just to be able to get over to
The school.
site? So you wouldn't have to like
Yep.
cross.
I mean, we have sidewalk on the Salem School campus along their frontage. You can see that's the little red lines right down here. And I'd have to, I mean, I'm seeing that their plan at this point doesn't show that. We could discuss that with planning. Because again, it's in the right of way and I don't know the conditions of the Old Jenks right of way corridor.
Just if there's a way to not have to cross.
Right.
Make it easier. And does this also assume that we are not removing the potential proposed greenway that's shown in the northeast corner of Salem Middle?
Yes, that would not remove that.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I'll make a note of that. All right. Item 4, realign South Walk proposed greenway. It moved the greenway alignment that connects Apex Peakway to Gumdrop Path so that the greenway runs along the north side of the stream, connecting to the Apex Peakway near the intersection with Grappenhall Drive. South Walk is a consistently high request corridor and with no way to complete it as long as the mobile home park remains in that location. There are segments along the proposed corridor where easement was not recorded in open space areas near Gumdrop Path and existing developments. So we would need to continue to secure greenway corridor in some of the parcels that are right here. And then the proposed alignment provides a route that could be built without impacting or needing to remove existing development that this previous alignment showed. Staff recommends the realignment of South Walk Greenway as it more closely follows the path of the stream and reduces impacts to existing residents in the Shangri-La Mobile Home Park. Any questions?
That alignment also follows an existing sanitary sewer
Much of it does.
west of Gumdrop Path, whatever it's called.
All right. Any other questions? Amendment 5 adds proposed greenway from Chapel Ridge Road heading east to intersect with Beaver Creek North Greenway. Staff is exploring alternate alignments offline with development that is currently in process, as well as looking for alternate routes between Chapel Ridge Road and the North Beaver Creek Greenway. This alignment was proposed and offers us a chance to work out greenway in a current project that is in plan review for a portion of the segment, as well as provides us flexibility that if that option cannot be finalized, that we could move the alignment north since it's sitting on a shared property line. We are aware that there is a pond in that location now that crosses a property line and some existing buildings, but the assumption is either it could work within the proposed development that is in the plan review process, or that it would be in an area located when a new development comes in the properties that are in the gray. So we're kind of putting an alignment that's straddling the line between what could be today and what might be in the future. So staff is recommending staff recommends the addition of this proposed greenway segment as it provides connectivity to Beaver Creek North Greenway from proposed side path along Chapel Ridge Road within residential areas and in addition to Beaver Creek Commons and Beaver Creek Greenway. And I don't know if you, just to try to give you perspective on this one, there's a townhome development that you guys have reviewed that's in this area. There is an apartment development that was many of these properties that are in this area. So there are only a few properties left between the two. We don't have a timeline for when those will change, but the idea of being able to connect and link and make a looping system that gets to Beaver Creek Commons, Beaver Creek Crossing, down south to the main spur of Beaver Creek, east to west, Olive Chapel Road. This just seemed like the opportunity before there was too many constraints and no possibility of getting down there. We have a gas pipeline and some steep slopes, but it just seems like this is the time to capture that opportunity before we don't have that any longer. And there is transit currently that comes here to Chapel Ridge Road. And so we thought that was a good opportunity then also to, somebody could get off, use transit at that location as well. Any other questions?
Is it worth considering extending side path all the way south on Chapel Ridge Road down to Olive Chapel, just given if there is a new kind of greenway connection at that place?
I think because of the density, their concern was to get it north through the apartments, and the project to the south doesn't have it on their approved plans at this point, so we would be going back and amending something.
Okay, thank you.
But it would be required to have sidewalk along.
Yeah, they'll have sidewalk on both sides.
Yeah.
Item 6. Proposes the realignment of Reedy Branch Greenway, including a mid-block crossing of Kelly Road south of Red Knot Lane, shifts the greenway to the south of Reedy Branch from Kelly Road to Rothwood Way, adds Creekside Commons proposed greenway access, adds Homestead Park proposed greenway access, removes Abington proposed greenway access, and adds Stratford Abington proposed greenway access at Rothwood Way, connecting to proposed greenway that extends to join the existing Reedy Branch Greenway at Goliath Lane. The alignment proposed is the result of our on-site feasibility study, which determined that access from Abington was not possible due to frequent flooding and constrained easement access that would not first be accessible or constructible adjacent to existing houses. One of the access locations is actually on top of like a 24-inch storm pipe, and we wouldn't be able to build structure, and we couldn't get a grade that was less than, I think, 18% slope, so not an ideal location for a greenway. The proposed alignment shifts the greenway south of Reedy Branch for a major segment to mitigate some of those issues, especially the flooding, but also offers opportunities to connect to several neighborhoods that previously did not have a planned connection to Reedy Branch. So mid-block crossing is here. This was something that would have to be worked out, obviously, at the time that the Greenway were connected. It might be possible that the request would be to go north or south, but there isn't a lot of space to widen the sidewalk on Kelly Road, and the preference sometimes is not to have the crossings at intersections. So we'd work with our transportation staff, but for now, they've asked for that to be on this amendment. And then you can see it follows the south side, which allows you to have a connection here, another connection here. The Abington residents, there was only one, well, there was two proposed connections. This one was actually recorded for easement. This was another option that has been on our plans, but it was a utility corridor that we had hoped to maybe have access. And then we would connect back to the proposed alignment here at Rothwood, but provide a connection to the north to their sidewalk, and then it would continue on its existing route to where we have constructed Greenway on Goliath Lane. And then just for reference, because we've had a lot of questions, these are just some exhibits of the backyard, and the Greenway would be right in this open area.
In the current proposal, this is a picture of Abington backyard?
Yes.
Okay.
This is Abington backyard. And what you can see in the one without the leaves is this is where some of the homes sit up on the other side. And there's a substantial flat, higher area that would still provide them protection and still have us be above some of these higher storm flood elevations. So we're out of the flood plain for the most part, and definitely out of the floodway and out of the sewer easement where we'd have issues with trying to build a boardwalk structure on top of sanitary sewer easements, where we're supposed to have offsets from the pipe that would be hard to meet with structures. So, and you can see we're up on the street level, so you can see how much different the elevation is between those two.
Angela, my biggest concern is the Abington folks that
Yeah.
bought in there that all think that a greenway is eventually gonna come on their side of the creek. And now we've just taken it and flipped it to the south side. And I agree, it's probably easier to build it on the south side. And there's a lot of connection points that can be made on the south. But there are a lot of people that saw a greenway on the master plan that was called an Abington Greenway. How many bridges are they gonna be asking for from Abington side across Reedy Branch?
And I think we've kind of assessed that. One is they have a sidewalk network to Rothwood Way currently. They also have the access that would come along Kelly Road to be able to get down to the Greenway at that location. And I hear you. The other thing is that's the HOA that's been most actively involved in contacting us and communicating resident requests. When we sent the notices out, we did notify all adjacent property owners. We showed them the map, and in the most case, the biggest, it was an 80-20 kind of scenario. 20% of the comments that came for please don't put it in my backyard came from the residents directly adjacent, and 80% of the we really are looking forward to this east to west Greenway corridor came from residents that lived in the northern part of the neighborhood. And so I think as long as we can build the connection and give them opportunities to connect, even if it's not in the middle here, it's still closer, and they would still be getting it from sidewalk at either one end or the other. So
Just know that there are gonna be a vocal few that
Right.
are gonna be, you know, we agree with moving this to the other side of the creek, but we want a bridge or some sort of access in
Right.
the middle of Abington to cross that creek, because it's been shown for 10 years
Yep.
or however long, so. That's probably my biggest concern with moving that one.
And the good information is we have on the ground, an inventory of this corridor, so we know a lot more than we ever would have in the past from that alignment.
Did you hear anything from the neighbors on the south side about?
We notified them, but did not. And of course, now that we're looking at this alignment, if we went to go from feasibility to funding design, we would then engage both, again, the whole corridor of adjacent property owners with the alignment plan that showed them where we were going to survey. And again, it will probably still shift a little here and there as we identify any kinds of wetlands or other slope or access issues that we couldn't identify without having a full survey. So this new process of doing feasibility studies gets us more ground truth sooner, gets us engaged with the residents for their feedback sooner. And then hopefully we'll have this year-over-year process where we'll be looking at corridors and moving them step by step forward and scoring them every year based on the 2 scoring criteria that we have already provided you guys that you reviewed.
do this once a year.
Yep.
I-
Yeah,
Can I offer one?
absolutely.
So if you see all the flooding in that picture, so imagine Beaver Creek. If you've ever been on Beaver Creek up by 540 and seen the silt that gets on that greenway. Well, in the past, we've moved it and it's definitely helped. It was a maintenance nightmare. So whenever you have a situation like that on a greenway, it is a maintenance nightmare. So I will offer that information as well because that's important to our operations crew. So to make sure we're not out there after every small rain. I don't know how much rain happened that day, but Beaver Creek was pretty rough on us for a while. So I will add that.
And we now have real today value on a corridor that's 1.5 miles long, that's Middle Creek, that we bid that has 80% boardwalk and it's $5.5 million. And so if we can avoid having to build corridors of boardwalk that have a longevity that's not maybe as good as asphalt or asphalt that would be underwater, we're just, we're trying to manage being able to provide more, but making it be at a reasonable cost. All right. Amendment 7 adds proposed greenway within Apex Nature Park linking existing trail near the park entrance at 2600 Evans Road through the park to the west, extending to proposed greenway along the Beaver Creek Greenway corridor with a realignment of proposed trails from a connection from Bella Casa. As a part of the feasibility study for Beaver Creek from the Nature Park west to the American Tobacco Trail, staff and consultants examined several alignments through the park area, including a connection near the turnaround parking lot that's sort of right at the end of this area here. In addition, we received notice from the HOA of Holland's Crossing up here that said that as an HOA, they were requesting that all connectivity to their neighborhood be removed. They didn't want it, and they felt that they had access from Apex Barbecue and the side path and sidewalk along here, and that they saw that they would have future connection on Kinship by sidewalk out to the west to Beaver Creek, and so they did not want this to be on the maps. We are not removing it as a recommendation, but we are pursuing an alignment that may not make that as convenient or not our first direction of how to get east to west, partly because, again, Beaver Creek Greenway that we're getting ready to put out to bid this year originally sort of had an alignment through here, and we realized that that was going to be really hard for us to achieve due to the conservation easements and the conditions of the floodway and floodplain along the sanitary sewer easement that runs in this area. And we felt like we had existing trail that comes through the park, and the idea was we could move that to the perimeter, keep it along. This is some existing sanitary sewer corridor in here, have it be away from the creek in the park on higher dry land, and yet route it so that it wasn't impacting pedestrian areas. So from that turnaround in the parking lot that's in front of the restrooms, if we build the environmental education center as it was originally planned for the park, the drop-off area at the turnaround, the access to the amphitheater from that parking area would be where the bike ped route would go through if it came off of one of these 2 trails. And so we moved it up to the to cross the entry drive a little way into the park before the parking lot starts. And then there's also a planted berm along this section, basically into here. And so while some of these properties are, let's say if you look at aerial photo, they have about 20 feet of the park that they are mowing as open play area for their backyards. But is some berm, and we don't have it right on the property line, so there would be at least planned perimeter space between where the trail is located and the property boundary. There's also a lot of, this crossing here is mapped in the conservation plan as one of 3 allowed crossings of the creeks in the park, and so we tried to line up with that to the extent possible. We also wanted to stay off of the area that's the disc golf course so that people riding bikes and trying to use the east to west as a bike corridor at a higher speed wouldn't be trying to navigate around disc golf. And that's a natural path trail for the most part. So we're trying to separate those uses. Let's see if I've covered all the details. It's obviously part of the reason it's in conservation areas because a lot of that site is not developable because of environmentally sensitive and low-lying, continuously wet areas. And so we try to not impact the conservation easements as they were designated and, be a good neighbor to those existing homes, but also provide a route that allows those who are riding the greenway as a bike trail, wanted it to be continuous at the higher level of the speeds allowed, would be able to do so without impacting existing and or proposed uses of space within the park. So based on that field study, staff is recommending the addition of the proposed greenway as it would improve bike pedestrian circulation within the park and fills the gaps and the link between the greenway segments to the east and the west of the park. Any questions on that?
No. It's my fault. I probably should have mentioned earlier, I have to leave here probably by like 7:15, 7:20, just so that you're aware the time we have a quorum.
Okay.
Because I have a kid that needs to get picked up.
Amendment 9.
Not to
No,
rush.
that's good.
Like, not-
We're good.
Not conduct the discussions we need to conduct.
I think we're at 8.
Yeah, we're good. Adds proposed, Amendment 9 adds proposed, 8, sorry, yep. Adds a proposed grade-separated bike ped crossing at the intersection of Richardson Road and Beaver Creek Greenway. Just north of this proposed crossing is Beaver Creek. If you've ever been out on Richardson Road at the time of a big storm, sometimes they have to shut it down because the creek floods over the road. Richardson is ultimately planned as a 4-lane median divided thoroughfare and is maintained by NCDOT. Since this road often floods, and we know that likely a new bridge will be required at some point when the road is improved to its build-out width and size, we anticipate a cost-share agreement between the town and NCDOT would be required to do what we did at Apex Barbecue and Kelly Road, which is pay for a bridge to be lengthened and raised in height so that we could have a crossing under that for this corridor. So it isn't likely something that would happen ahead of road improvements, but it's something we want on the maps so that at the time that road improvement work would be considered, we were already there, potentially either with Greenway and it's a bad kind of corner turn too. So staff recommends the addition of the proposed grade separated crossing as it would improve safety of the area at Richardson Road build out. Any questions? Nope. All right. Amendment 9 adds proposed street side greenway along the north side of Barker Road between the Chatham County line and New Hill Olive Chapel Road. This provides bike ped access from the Recreation Activity Center that is planned as part of the comprehensive land use plan at Hume Olive and New Hill Olive Chapel Roads, which is also the southern terminus of what could be the developed area in the American Tobacco Trail corridor if it were to extend to the full length that Wake County has any agreements to manage. It would go west into Chatham County, which ultimately provides access to Jordan Lake as Barker Road turns into Pool Road at the county line and ends at the lake with a parking lot and small kind of beach area that people use. During the master plan, we got a lot of comments about like high priority of having access to water activities. And so while Chatham County doesn't have any plans for any kind of recreation, whether bike ped or parks in this area, We want to start the dialogue of how we can provide access to Jordan Lake, partly because it's not just a request that came from our residents. Part of the NC Great Trail State Plan, they also discussed that one of the priorities in this area was access to the lake. And so if we have an activity center here for recreation type services, we have our park that's to the east, you have the American Tobacco Trail ending here, you have the New Hope Valley Rail running right to here and turning around. It just appears to be a good start to do, and we're doing it as the street side greenway, which is a more rural segment, just with the thought that maybe we could get something that provides a link for people to be able to stay and play in the county, not have to go to the campsites if they just wanted to ride their bike to the lake. Any questions on that? All right. Item 10 adds proposed greenway connecting the future Olive Farm Park to a proposed side path within the Retreat at Friendship Station project. They are dedicating 3.1 acres right here to the park as a part of their project. And we've just asked, since their side path, to provide a connection from the south. It's at an angle because that runs right along an overhead utility corridor. So we just wanted to make the most of the land that was going to be available with the dedication, but also show proposed access. So that was on the plans. Any questions about that? So staff is recommending the addition of the proposed greenway. Item 11. Adds proposed greenway that starts at the eastern terminus of Padstone Drive, heading southwest along the north side of Big Branch, then splitting after it crosses Flint Valley Lane, with its two ends terminating at the grade-separated crossing of South Salem Street across from Depot 499, and at the side path along the future extension of Widger Lane. This area of town has no public park or greenway access, and this proposed alignment will provide connectivity to the two elementary schools, the future Pleasant Plains Elementary School and Apex Elementary School, as links to the grade separated crossing of CSX rail here, and then there's also one off of Tingen right up here when that road closes, and then the easements would need to be required from Salem Village in their existing open space, but we feel that this linking corridor throughout their neighborhood in this area would be a benefit to the community. And ultimately, all of this connects to other systems that would take you downtown.
Angela,
Inverted,
those greenways are already there, meaning on the town's greenway plan, is that dash line not already there for most of it?
No,
No.
It's, I mean, there, you can see the underlying, if you look at, don't
I
look at
think
the
that's
color
just
one. If you look-
stream. This streamline.
Is that the stream or is that a greenway that's underneath of
That's
it?
stream.
There is nothing on the master plan is the question already. through
I
any
don't
of
think
that?
there is.
I don't think
If it
there
is, it's-
So this is mine and Renee's neighborhood. We don't have greenway through
Yeah,
there.
if
You
you
know.
look under where the arrows are, you zoom in right where the hand is there, you can see it looks like there's a,
oh, I can't.
so,
It might be
that's fine.
it might be an underlying line. It's
I
not,
thought, when I
yeah.
looked at it the other day, I thought there was already a greenway there.
nope, not in this quarter here.
That's fine.
Yeah. That's why we need two maps that are consistent.
You want the greenway through there?
All right. Item 12. Amendment 12 adds proposed side path along the east side of East William Street from Sunset Lake Road north to Highway 55 and along the eastern side of Highway 55 to join the previously proposed side path south of the future Jesse Drive extension. Bike lanes are not proposed along East William Street, and this completes the corridor of side path from the town's boundary at the south and aligns with NCDOT plans proposed for Highway 55 improvements. So this recommendation came at the request of residents, and I think ties to addressing connectivity into the future Verdia project, east and west to Middle Creek, and with the planned Wake Tech campus provides opportunity, especially from the south of the apartments and everything, to get up to that area on a off-street, wider segment. Any questions? All Amendment 13, as proposed greenway along the east side of a tributary of Middle Creek bordering the future Felton Grove High School, north to Stevenson Road and Wild Blossom Drive. It also proposes side path on the south side of Colby Chase Drive, extension east of Smith Road, continuing along Rhythm Drive to Stevenson Road. Staff has secured greenway within the school property on the southern side of the campus, and that's a part of their master plan or site plan to do that work and install that greenway, and as well as we've held meetings with numerous Wake County Public Schools system staff, it's too many S's, as we work more closely on connectivity between schools and the neighborhoods, along with residents that surround the campuses. Just a note that we're finding ways to work together more closely than ever, and we're looking at alternatives, not as safe routes to school, because greenways, again, don't apply in that, but as alternatives for folks who might be able to let a student access the school versus doing carpool. So, you know, they might be in a bus zone, but they don't, and they do carpool, and we could maybe leave some of that. So you've got changes up through here. We looked, and this again is one of those where we're reaching out and trying to find what we can see with easements, utility corridors, to provide connectivity in this very edge of the town limits and future ETJ properties, but at the same time make some connectivity that gets, you know, east and west and brings this over into other areas where we have other facilities. Any questions about that? All right. And this is in the wrong order, but here we go. Amendment 14 is all about Big Branch. This is one of our feasibility studies. This removes a proposed trail for the Big Branch Greenway south of James Street to the Apex Peakway, utilizing proposed side path along the west side of Tingen Road instead. This is already in the plan for this side path to be along Tingen Road. So we would be realigning the corridor from Apex Peakway north to James Street as utilizing that versus being a greenway in this corridor. So that's removal of that and replacing it with something that's already on the plan. This change would remove access from Wake Acres to Greenway. It would relocate Lexington proposed Greenway access, would add access to Bradley Terrace, as well as realign proposed Greenway to the west side of Big Branch Creek south of Apex Peakway. We're recommending this alignment from based on doing the feasibility study, and I'll go back up to show you some of these photos. This is the corridor, and basically the sewer runs through here. Most of these lots have basements or should have basements. And so just this is the gas pipeline would be one of the places that was planned for an access, and we couldn't get down it with switchbacks because we wouldn't be able to go over the pipeline. And the corridor in between leaves us about 5 foot of space from the back of fences. And so it's just not, it's 20 foot wide. It's not feasible for us to.
It's really
try
stupid.
to-
I don't know how you would get down from, you know, some down to kind of elevation.
Right. So when we couldn't get down there in an accessible route without stairs, if we even did that, and once we were down there, we wouldn't even have enough width to build a 10-foot trail. So we want this corridor to have facilities, and so again, the best options appeared to be to move it to side path there and work on this area that's not got development and see what we could do to make sure we had enough width in that corridor. So that's what's being proposed with this alignment. So again, we did 14 amendments, and we do have one other item after this, so just to keep you on track of time. So it's your call on whether or not you want to do an individual motion for all amendments, or for some of them, or one at a time. And we can go back and look at any of them that you have. And I will give you the full map that shows you sort of how these amendments were spread out to try to address greenways throughout the town.
I don't see any reason why we can't do one approval for all 14.
Yeah, I'm happy to move forward. I would just add the, just the staff consider adding side path just for that north part of Old Jenks Road, just to get over to the school site.
Yeah, that's the one. That was amendment
Just
3.
to add, yeah, potential to add it future, not to hold up approving what's here now, because I don't have any issue with it.
Okay, I will let them know.
Everybody okay with that?
Yep.
So we need a motion to approve the staff recommendations for the proposed greenways and side paths for the 14 amendments and item number 2 of new business.
I'll make the motion to approve all 14 amendments.
Second.
All right, motion and properly second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carried. Number 3, item on new business.
So, again, this is our master plan map with the overall recommendations for item 3. Again, I've got these sort of grouped into 2. One is, well, it's 3 steps. One is a recommendation to delete all of the 5 areas that we've been looking at over the past 10 years for land dedication. So that would be one, is removing that. The second component is the adding indoor recreation facility areas. So these are areas where we would look for indoor recreation facilities. And if you remember when we work sessioned this topic, one of the things was it's a broad, it doesn't mean gymnasium, it doesn't mean classroom, it means what we need at the time when we're looking at it. But these were areas that were identified either in future parkland, in the Viridia project, where there's a requirement that they provide indoor recreation. And this is sort of the edge of the park where we talked about the Environmental Education Center. And then the other kind of category is more like sort of diverse separated areas to look for land dedication as projects were submitted into the town. So you have the list of them, but ideally the proposal would be one, to amend or to delete all current land acquisition areas identified in the 2014 master plan. The second would be to add 7 proposed parkland search areas for future acquisition. And then the third would be to add indoor recreation facility search areas to the map. So these are all map amendments. And they're sort of generally located, but they'd be based on this map. They're not parcel or lines, they're search areas, so.
And say like the new parkland search, like the northernmost parkland search, that is the new, right?
Mm-hmm.
That if we found, would we possibly add that, add an indoor recreation facility within that parkland? Like if,
So right now, that's sort of centered over Wimberley Road Park because the concept plan from our consultants included an indoor facility there. It's a target search area, but there's 2 things that could happen. One is we think of them as being like a rec center in a park, but the other opportunity could be that it is, and things that we've considered is an agreement with somebody to use a facility. And so I think these are targets that we sort of know, but there's opportunities for us to expand programming, some through acquisition or others through an agreement, either with another. I don't know if that totally answers your question.
yeah, I think it's just that we're not limiting ourselves in any way because they are just targets. Does the size, I mean, is the kind of just the physical representation of the different sizes for the indoor facilities, does that represent anything?
No, I think it just, provided for the sort of the perimeter of that. There's developable land, there's land that could be acquired. The Environmental Education Center could be, and our plan right now is to be, but there are some large adjacent parcels that are along the Greenway corridor that also could be a good facility for something that isn't the Environmental Education Center. And so while we might think of that as being on the west side of the park, there's also a couple of larger parcels that could be good for a indoor facility that might be another type of facility that we could use. And I think, I look at the Viridia project and they're master planning on their own, and then they have to bring us a master plan for their parkland. And so, you know, where that could be, we want to look at the whole area, but they control that to the extent that if they start on the east and develop to the west, if they don't identify it up front, which we can't require them to do at this point, they may be on the west. And we've sort of holistically looked at the whole project boundary as potential, even though right now they're putting most of the residential on the east and they're talking about the land being in the west.
So with the adoption of this plan, would it require that some portion of what they're developing would need to be the indoor recreation?
Yes, it's in their SD plan. It's just a different process than any other project. So they're required to provide us with space for a 22,500 square foot indoor facility. Similar, the description at that time that was approved was similar to phase 1 of the community center. So some indoor classroom space, a gymnasium, and then associated.
So it's kind of a minimum program
Right,
environment.
right. Because at the time they were talking about 10,000 residential units, and it had something that, and the advisory commission met many times on it and made recommendations, but that was where that agreement with the town ended up when council voted on it. So, and that would address that corridor south of US 1. So this we did sort of as, again, 3 proposals. You could make a motion that would address all of them like all of the plan changes for land dedication. Or you could approve deleting the old areas, adding the new, and then adding the indoor facility. So
I'm not a fan of the map. I like the big circles that we had that had a large area that said if something in this area comes in, it allows staff to start the discussions. We've almost gotten to a point where that somebody has identified the parcels that want to like be acquired for future parkland, and we've drawn a circle around it. So I get the idea of identifying locations, but we're almost to the point of telling developers when they come in that if you're developing in this basin, we're going to come to you for land dedication.
I guess maybe that's a clarification that I want, because in saying that these are like target areas and having, I mean, just the graphic representation of like what limits we're showing on the map, that if a developer says that, you know, they come in here and they're 3 millimeters off of the search area, does that exclude them from needing to be required to provide something?
well, so for example, this area that was this large circle was originally to the east further and included Pleasant Park. So when Pleasant Park was purchased, the staff at the time came back with an amendment that shifted that circle farther to the west. At that time, that also picked up, by moving it westward, the land that became Olive Farm Park. So in a sense, having it within that boundary made that easier. I don't know, from a perspective of looking at it at this level, I feel like, yeah, it sort of seems arbitrary, but I also think when we sort of zoom in on it, in some ways, it already encompasses land. Like this area has the Knights Play, which is on the future land use map as park, public or private. So their land use is already designated by the land use plan from a planning perspective as if it transitions from being Knights Play golf course, it would need a land use map to be something that wasn't park, public, or private. It also incorporates, like down here, the linear park that we have seen that's on the land use plan that's park, public, or private. But also looks at, well, so could you add to that? This area isn't developed as much, maybe this, because it has a lot of, it's either large residential lots in rural residential kind of development, or it starts to tag into where we have office and industrial on our plan. So then could you build an indoor facility that was more like a warehouse type indoor gym space where it's, you know, volleyball and basketball and that sort of thing versus being, you know, more of a in-town community gathering place. So I think when we looked at it with the consultants, we sort of looked at areas that weren't served, and they had this other map that they shared with you guys about the the walking access from residential, that 10-minute, and we talked about, we don't really have a lot of people who walk to our parks, so the other thing was the drive distance, and so these are the pockets that aren't met in a drive distance, sort of overlapping with the idea of a walk distance. And if you're coming on a major road and you're going, these are the areas in town that at this point are what's left that don't either have development already in place or are outside of meeting those sort of metrics. So does everything have to be in those areas? Obviously, if we had the opportunity, and I know one that we've talked about, that's not in any of these boundaries, but it's a property that we've kind of seen that isn't available, that they're not interested, but at some point might be something we would pursue. Would we not pursue it because it was outside of this? No, we would. I mean, if the opportunity came or somebody came to us, we would still add those. But I get from the development perspective, this is just sort of spreading the geography. The map we have doesn't show you the one that you saw where it showed our existing parks and a bubble around them as well. And so maybe that doesn't give you the full representation of that, but this is sort of the input of where people said they wanted, how we met those measurements of level of service by access.
I mean, to me, the yellow circles are basically taking the undeveloped part of APEX and saying, these are our designated areas that we're gonna go after for parkland. I mean, you could basically draw a square around all of APEX and say, this is our parkland dedication area. I mean, it really wouldn't be any different, because you're not gonna get a park down by, in Abington, you're not gonna get a park inside of Bella Casa. So it's basically saying that these areas are undeveloped now. Anybody that comes anywhere close to this is going to be asked for parkland dedication. But like you said, if they're outside of those yellow circles, it doesn't mean you're not going to ask anyway.
Right.
So, and which is fine. I'm okay with that. I just think that these are very random and they're very. I mean, it's very.
I can see that there's different layers that we're probably not seeing on. If you draw the bubble of service kind of around the existing parks, and then, so I'm starting to understand that. And I also, if I look at the original kind of land acquisition areas, it's like half of Apex too. So I think we're kind of like honing in and kind of, being able to like focus a little bit more on like where the priority should be for that look, but not to say we're not gonna kind of pass over anything for a first look too.
And I agree with that. Just like I said, I think these are they're almost like you said, that's the piece we want. Let's draw a circle over it, around it, and say, when anything comes in this area, a project that may not be associated with a piece of property that can be purchased for dedication, staff may ask this person, hey, developer, hey, builder, go see if you can acquire that piece down the street that we see as a possible future park site. So I don't know, I like keeping the toolbox, having as many options for staff as possible, and putting these circles on here. A developer may walk in and say, I'm not in any of those circles, so I don't have to do land dedication, regardless of what Angela asked for. So that's why I like the larger circles, because it picks up more area to ask more future development.
That's the only concern I have, is that in changing it, does it now give the developers a way to not have to provide something that they are currently needing to provide?
And they can always, 90% of our projects come through here, and Cantor said a couple months ago, is 90% of them are fee in lieu anyway.
Yeah.
Acquisition of property is very difficult and very expensive. So.
And tonight we voted on one that was in this land dedication bubble,
Right.
but we didn't ask for land dedication.
Right.
So is the bigger,
That's why I don't
Because
have
of
a problem
proximity.
with the
And
more
not to
kind of
go-
focused view of those areas that are a little bit more targeted, because they are based on data, they're based on what our current conditions are, they're based on service, they're based on access. So I see the logic in kind of like getting this more kind of like detailed look.
Is your concern only from a developer's perspective? Is that really the primary? Because aren't they going to evaluate the land from the context of their ability to develop it and sell it primarily? And if there's, and potentially if there is going to be a land dedication for park, wouldn't that in some ways even enhance the value of the land from the developer's perspective?
It could. I think the cost of land is, as everybody knows, has skyrocketed.
Right,
So from I'm not a developer, I'm an engineer, so I deal with the builders all the time.
Yeah.
They want to know going in what the question, what the answer is.
Sure, I get that.
So
Yeah.
if they walk in, they see a big yellow circle, it's just one more reason for them to walk away from a piece of property. and then you don't get fee in lieu. Now, granted, somebody else in 2 years may pick it up, or 5 years may pick it up. So it's simply a matter of, I just think that these are very targeted locations. I'm okay with the indoor facilities because they appear to each be associated with some other park, whether it's, you know, one's at Friendship High School, one's at the nature park, one's up by the trailhead up on Wimberley, and the other's right smack dab in the middle of Heredia. So those are 4 very targeted locations where it associates with another, you know, something else is already there.
Right.
But the park dedication is basically singling out the areas that have not yet been developed. It's doing the same thing that the circles are doing. It's just, I guess, maybe taking a little bit tighter. So, I like I said,
I guess in
I want
having
staff to have the ability to ask.
I guess the green and the yellow, do they both mean the same thing? So I guess is the concern that we are limiting ourselves too much in now having these kind of tighter
What I'm hearing is
zones?
we're not limiting ourselves. That, yes, those are there, but it doesn't preclude the staff from going after land that is not within each of these areas,
That's
right?
what I, right. That's
So what's the point of having the yellow circles? If staff can ask for it anywhere in town, what's the point of having the circles? Does it help staff with funding? Does it help staff with council? Does it help staff with planning board? What's the point of restricting the big green circles, which is 25% of Apex, down to the yellow circles, which are much more targeted?
Well, let me show you, give you this to, maybe this will help. If I can figure out where to enlarge this. Oh, there we go. Maybe I'll find that. So for example, this is, to me, is a good one. This is the apex carry line. So when we get like here, even though the bubble is there, and this is all carry, so that isn't parkland. All of this in here is, to the most part, developed, or it's commercial non-residential. So in a sense, in this big circle, this is the only part of that that is, in a sense, underdeveloped or could redevelop.
That's the potential, yeah.
So in a sense, we're refining and sort of taking out the pieces, and that's one to me that I could easily just point to and say, for the most part, that's all that's really left. In this area, we have core land, we have it doesn't show up on these maps, but this is our wastewater or water treatment facility. There's a Duke Power facility. There's our park in the middle of it. There's this area that is pretty much either a big project we just saw, or there's property over here where there's been discussion about redevelopment. Sometimes people in or out. And so again, this whole piece is already designated, and this is sort of the piece that's left. And so from that perspective, we are kind of capturing what's left, with the idea that when we get out here anyway, and I guess the other piece is, one of the goals that you guys saw as a part of the recommendations was not just parkland for active recreation and parks, but conservation land. And so, like, the purchase of the Williams Tract at the north end of the future Wimberley Road parkland was watershed protection money that we shared the cost with Town of Cary to protect White Oak Creek and Jordan Lake watershed. And so we're buying land that is not necessarily intended for a lot of heavy use. It's intended to try to protect apex open space, tree canopy, and some of those other things. So I think our focus of parkland isn't as much as it used to be almost always for what can we build on it, but a combination of some of it being, can we protect any open space in that area? And is there a way that and I know that somebody's, like, for example, been assembling a lot of land in this area, that when that larger project might come in, that would be really the only opportunity we have, because it's not going to be open market where we can go and pursue it as a town property. So again, I mean, that was just to give you an example of that. This one, I know most of it's in Jordan Lake watershed, but it sort of gave us some of maybe these pieces that are potentially more conservation based. That's how I've sort of seen it, or on the edges of where we have greenway corridors that we might be able to put a trailhead and maybe a small passive type facility versus everything being big active park space, like for programmable, because I think we know we need some of that in other areas. So I don't know. It gives me a lot to work with, but and our staff to evaluate. But I know that those are the things that came to that. So maybe we simplified too much in making it just a map amendment that didn't have all the data sets with it. Because if you had seen those in reference, but what we've got to figure out in this process is we're amending the map. We're not just adopting like a whole new master plan map. What we're going to do is amend the map, and then we're going to sort of work off of that as a new type of map when the master plan's adopted. So I know that helped, but it's still on your guys' plate to make how you want to
First
do it.
motion is to remove the existing 5 land dedication bubbles from the current plan.
Land acquisition areas.
Yes.
So you guys could do that, or you could do all 3. I mean, again, like you can.
Oh, yeah.
You can separate them.
Request them separated,
Okay.
if you guys don't mind.
No.
So then your first one would be
Delete the land.
to delete the current land acquisition areas. Because you're making a map amendment, which sort of ties to land use or how people do the process of land dedication or fee in lieu that you guys vote on with every project.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And those that oppose?
No,
And where do we go from there?
no, it moves forward. You got
It
to.
passes.
It's still
got
3-1.
Require unanimous.
Did you vote?
That's the part I'm stuck on, right? So I don't know if
He votes, it's 4-1.
You vote. I mean,
It's already 3 to
sorry.
1.
it's still 3-1. So
right,
either way it
right.
passes.
So either way it passes. Okay. And so I'm in a place where I don't know. I don't have enough information here. Like, what am I voting on? We're talking about circles and lands and green and yellow. So I'm in this space where this is a lot, right? And so I didn't, and this is a part of it. I know we got to go, but just coming through here, passing stuff and aye and nay and all that kind of stuff. So, if I had to vote because I don't know enough about it, I would say nay.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Fair enough. So, it's
So,
still, but it still carries.
still,
That's why you're on
motion still
the-
carries
Yeah.
because it's now what 3-2, right? So motion carried. All right.
So, and this is you guys are gonna laugh at me. I'd like to make a motion to approve the indoor recreation facility locations based upon the map.
Right.
Second.
I agree.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Those that oppose? All right. Motion carried.
Can we laugh at you now?
Well, the last one is to add, make a motion to add the new Parkland search areas for acquisition.
Yes. So that's adding the orange circles.
This is the third one.
Yes. Well, you did them in reverse order, but I got it. This is the second set of proposals, but
All right,
we know
second.
what your topic
I
is.
second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Those that oppose?
No.
All right. I'm saying aye to that one. Motion carried. All right. And
Is it okay if I head out?
Right. So you just need to make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Well, do we need a direct?
Well, y'all don't have to listen to my report. I'll just talk.
okay, I was saying because we got
We
all
have to
the
end the meeting. We have
Yeah,
to end the
you
meeting
have to
because we run out of
adjourn
quorum.
with
Yeah.
you, I think.
We
right?
take
Yes.
quorum.
Oh, okay.
You-
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.
Thank you.